In this video, I give you a preview of the Snapships Tactics Kickstarter that's launching in July of 2022. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of June of 2022, we have the Dynamod Magnetic Dungeon Starter Box valued at $170. 3 all-in pledges for Dungeon Lab Kickstarter that's happening right now. A base pledge for Dungeons and Lasers Encounters, another Kickstarter that is going on right now. 3 core set plus stretch goal pledges for the 3D printable fantasy NPCs Kickstarter going on as well. And also an intermediate pledge for this Kickstarter, again, will be launching next month. And $100 to go towards a crowdfunder, which my Patreon supporters are currently voting upon. If you're interested, use my link below to go to my Patreon page to get more information. So when I went to Gen Con last fall, I did demo this game as they were providing demos and had a booth with all of these Snapships. And I liked it a lot, so I made contact, and Scott, one of the founders for Snapships, did touch base with me recently and did send me a demo kit since they are going to come out with their Kickstarter finally. Now here I have more than the demo kit. Actually, the only ships that came are these two right here, the Scarab and the Saber. But I was so excited about this that I went ahead and went to Amazon and I purchased all these other ships. Even though some of them aren't even going to have rules for the game, I was just excited and had a ton of fun putting these pieces together. So if you like building out Legos at all, you're really going to love these Snapships, and they are currently widely available. Now, Scott and his buddy, they teamed up to create Snapships and had multiple iterations. They have a fascinating story, and my hope is to interview them once we get into July. But at least for this preview, just wanted to show you basic gameplay as well as some of the options that are tied together with this game. They did have the intention of creating a game, but sort of what happened initially was they did it in 2 phases where they created this toy line where you can currently purchase them, and now they have finally added the rules that go along with it. Quick note, as a preview video, any of these items can be changed as these aren't final production pieces, and even the rules that I go through later on, they might possibly change those as well. I do know that they're going to have a how-to play video, so my sort of one run-through of the rules is really quick and mostly just to give you a feel of how the rules play, which are relatively simple and easy even for kids to be able to pick up, very intuitive. These are all of the pieces that you are going to get in the base box, and I think the base box is going to be $99, and then they're going to have an intermediate pledge where they're going to throw in more of the playable ships, and that's going to be closer to $200, and then more pledges even after that. So one of the gratitude gifts is going to be for that mid-tier pledge. I'm not 100% sure what is going to be included since I don't have access to a preview page yet, but overall I think this is going to be a great deal. And many of you are going to automatically ask, is this just XWing repackaged with these larger ships? And I want to say right off the bat, having played XWing myself, this is a fairly different game. It plays out really differently. The similarities are that you are playing spaceships on this field. At least this introductory scenario is played on a 3x3, but it is variable, the size of the map, depending on the scenarios. You do have movement templates, and you are able to maneuver around with various terrain that is on the board. But other than that, it is pretty different. You don't have movement dials at all, so you're not pre-planning what your movements and actions are going to be. Rather, there is a marriage with resource management where you need to figure out what kind of actions you're going to take because you're limited based off of power cubes, which is a resource, and each turn you need to be able to vent those power cubes to get those back. So there is much more of a component of resource management in addition to the tactics of placement on the board and movement and all kinds of things like that. So it is not just a repackaging of XWing, and in fact I think this game plays fairly differently. Another difference is in X-Wing, you have multiple ships that you are commanding on the board. But in this game, really the base level is playing one-on-one, although later on there are options once you become more experienced where you are adding more ships. But it isn't the large number of ships that you find in X-Wing. In this case, really you can play with just one ship each, and there's more options that you can do with each ship. Of course, the coolest thing about this is the fact that you can make your ships WYSIWIG, which is what you see is what you get. One of the things that I've always wondered is, why hasn't someone come out with a rule set to use with Legos, where you're building up your ships or robots or whatever, some kind of miniature board game where you can actually create and have different variations of whatever piece that you are playing on the board. And so this is hitting that mark exactly, where you are having fun putting these ships together, but also they have real game components where each one of these pieces has some kind of effect or additional ability onto your ship. So that's where the genius of this game really comes in, and the excitement as a player is that you can try out different loadouts, you can try out different components. Of course, you can do that with X-Wing, but that's represented by different cards. Your model never actually changes. What's super cool about this is your pieces actually do change based off of how you kit them out. And what's handy is, at the beginning, for beginner players, they have a recommended loadout that you can start off with, and as you get to know all of the pieces and what they do, you can customize your ship, and that's where I think the genius of this whole system lies. Because they came out with the toy line first, I am a little bit concerned that people might not take the tactical skirmish game more seriously, because I do think that it is just as deep as X-Wing, if not even more, because you're customizing each one of your ships. The rules are relatively simple, but there is a ton of depth and a ton of tactics, especially because you're limited with what actions you're able to do. And one of the things, honestly, that I didn't like about X-Wing was, because you didn't quite know what the other opponent was going to do, and you had to predetermine your movement and your actions, sometimes I would totally whiff and predict wrongly where their ship was going to be and was unable really to do anything, and I would waste a turn. In this case, that doesn't really happen, because as you're moving along, you can react to what your opponent has done, and you're not pre-planning what you're doing, and you're not committed to that plan. The other thing that I really like about this compared to X-Wing is that these ships are super cheap. One pre-painted X-Wing miniature, which is about this big, although they are super cool, does cost about the same as this whole ship if you buy it on Amazon. Again, use my affiliate links below if you want to go to Amazon. That will help out the channel if you do want to purchase some of these ships ahead of time, like I did, just to play around with them and try out different builds. I actually bought 2 of these Tridents right away, because right now Amazon has them on sale for only $10 each. And again, I'm used to X-Wing prices. That is a steal. So you're getting a lot more ship and a lot more variability for a relatively cheap buy-in price. So you're getting a huge bang for your buck, because each one of these models does come with 3 different variations in terms of what you can field, and they look really different from each other. They aren't super similar. So for example, this is sort of the base Scarab that they show on the box for this game. So here is an alternative build which has different abilities. So with one kit, you have 3 different kinds of ships that you can field. And because you're not putting as many ships on the board as you do with X-Wing, you're also saving money there by not having to have, hundreds of dollars worth of models. Also, a quick note, they did send me the STL file for these bases, and I went ahead and did multi-level color changes on my FDM printer to achieve these results. So I printed out a bunch for these guys, as well as these blue ones, just so that they can be faction focused. And I don't know if Scott and the crew is going to make these STL files widely available for you to be able to make. I did appreciate, though, because this guy in particular, the joining piece is way in the back. I didn't like how far forward that pushed this model, so I made an adjustment of this angled piece so that it could be more centered. But as long as Scott says it's okay for me to share those files, just use the link below. Otherwise, I'm not. Don't ask me for those files if you don't see them in the description. So let me go ahead and do a quick run through of the base rules so you can get a sense of how to play. So the first thing you want to do is set up your cards. So go ahead with the starting set. We're going to start off with the Saber, the XF-23 Fighter. You can pick other ones, but just to start off, it's easier just to use the base ones out of the box. And what we're going to do is when you flip it over, grab all of the parts cards that are pre-built here. Now, as you get to know the game, you can customize all of your ships based as long as you have these components. But again, to start off, we're going to just start off with the preset. That way you can learn the game. So we're going to go ahead and just grab all of these cards and set them out here along the side. And with the missile card that comes with the Saber, we're going to go ahead and grab these light missile tokens. And then you're going to have your tracker here, and you're going to go ahead and set your hull points, which is 15. So use these wheels to set that up. And then as well, you want to go ahead and set up your evasion as well so that it matches this number down here, which is a 2. And we went ahead and did that with the Scarab as well. And then look up here, that's how many power cubes that you're going to put onto your starting card, and both of them are going to have 7. So in effect, these are the action cubes or power cubes that you're going to be using to power up all of these abilities on these cards. You are going to roll off to see who is the first player, and so just go ahead and roll, and this counts as 9, the critical hit, and the blank as 0. So the Saber is going to go ahead and go first, and you do actually start off with your ships off of the board, and as part of your first step you bring it onto the board along the side that you have chosen, and then once it's the other player's turn, they're also going to bring in their ship as long as it is touching the edge, their base, and it can be pointed any direction, and then you can go ahead and move and proceed with your turn. One thing to take notice, and it's easy to forget, is your chassis ability. So here for the Saber, it says while you have no disabled parts, you choose which part is disabled by enemy attacks. Normally the enemy is the one that chooses which is disabled, but as long as you have no disabled cards over here, then you can pick which one is disabled. And the special ability for the Scarab is that during a collision, you may re-roll 1 die, which is represents just these blades that are part of the wings. It does some damage once ships collide with each other. So for the purposes of this demo, let's just go ahead and say that the ships have already taken a turn and gotten on the board, and let's say it is the Saber's turn, and what we do is we follow this turn order as sort of our default actions during our part of the turn. So the first thing that we do, just follow this along from left to right. We reset our evasion to 2, which again at the beginning of the game will be 2, but there's various things that happen throughout your turn. But at the beginning of your turn, before your first action, is to reset it back to 2. And then you can vent up to 5 power or heat. You can pick any combination. And venting happens when you have cubes that are on various parts that you have used during your previous turn. So this would enable me to pull back some of my blue cubes. And then the heat, whatever heat that was taken up by an action, I'm able to choose that as well to vent it and put it back into the community pool. So that basically allows us to have actions each round. And then now we have movement. So our first thing is that I can rotate 1, and then I need to make a long movement. So here what I'm going to do with the Saber is I'm going to go ahead and rotate 1, and the number 1 is based off of these really small to see indents that are on the turning radius. And when you turn, you just put the template down and then you turn the model until it clicks into place. 1 turn. Now you can choose to do less than that. You don't have to do a full 1, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and make that much of a turn and then stick this to go ahead and make my long movement. So this is a short movement here. This is the long movement. And I put it up against the arrow and then move my ship that follows along so that the back end is there. So I just accomplished my long movement and fulfilled all of my obligatory actions that are on my card. An exception to the turning options is the U-turn. If you see this symbol on your card, you are able to go 180 degrees back the other direction, but if you choose to do that, you have to do the full 180. You can't stop halfway like at 90 degrees or anything like that if you use this ability. But otherwise, all the other turns, you can opt to do less than the full number, 45 degrees or 90 degrees you can pick. So after having done my obligatory things on this line, we go ahead and choose which one of my part actions that I want to do. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and fire my MK16 autocannon, and in order to do so, I need to pay 2 power. So I'm going to take 2 cubes and stick them onto here to fulfill the costs. And then what I can do is shoot, and it shows a 90-degree arc, and it has to be within 2 lengths in terms of range. So let's go ahead and make sure that we can do that. And there is pre-measuring here, so you're not committing to actually firing if you find out you're not within range, but I am. And because the arc of fire is 90 degrees, I'm using these 2 white hash marks. There are some weapons that fire within a 45-degree arc, and you can't tell very well here, but there are 2 marks here that are the 45-degree angle. But in this case, this weapon is 90 degree, and I definitely am within 2 of these lengths of the measuring ruler. So within range, within my arc of fire. So I'm going to go ahead and fire, and I'm rolling 4 red dice, and I need to roll 2 ups in order to hit, which seems really easy, but what you have to do is you add in the whole value of the other model, so that is actually 3. So 2 plus 3 is I need 5 ups in order to hit. Again, rolling 4 dice. So I'll go ahead and roll, and here I only hit 2 because I rolled a 5 and a 7. And then we look here and we see that each hit does 1 point of damage. So in this case, I would have done 2 points of damage onto the hull value, and this would go down to 10. Now let's say I did roll a critical as one of my hits, so it would go ahead and go down to 10, but I would also damage one of their ship parts, and let's just randomly pick this one, and I would pick this and say that the maneuvering fins are damaged. And I'll talk later about how to repair any damaged parts. But in this case, that was a successful attack and was able to do 2 points of damage that way. Now, there are modifiers. So, for example, if this scarab was actually being hit in its flank, which is this section here, this arc, as long as the ship is fully within it, for example, if part of the arc was towards the front of the ship, it wouldn't count, wouldn't receive the flanking bonus. It has to be 100% in the back arc, or the back 180 degree arc here, in order to get a -1 to the 2 hit number. So instead of needing a 5 to hit, I would actually only need 4s on my dice in order to hit. So that's a bonus that way. And then if I am fully between the rear arc, which is this 90 degree arc here, which in this case I would be right now, then I would get a -2 to the 2 hit, and that would mean I would need 3s to hit on my dice. So it's advantageous to actually be fully in the rear and attacking. Additionally to the -2 to the 2 hit modifier, you're also going to add 1 more point of damage. So in this case, I did 2 points of damage, flipped over one of the cards, and then I would add 1 more, so that it would be 3 total. You're not adding 1 to this value because it would multiply that +1. You're only adding 1 more damage total to the whole amount of your damage. Now that was a pretty good attack. I did 2 points of damage. Let's say it was in the front arc, so I didn't get that bonus. But let's go ahead and look at this card. So my cockpit allows me to re-roll up to 2 dice. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to use 2 power cubes. So let's go ahead and stick that on there. And I'm going to re-roll the 2 dice that missed. And again, I needed 5s, so that missed. So the result didn't change at all. Now I have 3 more power cubes left. And let's go ahead and instead of using it for movement, so in this case I could choose to do a really radical move, or I could choose to do a more of a normal move without getting any heat. So either one of those could be good. Now here's one thing, if I already had cubes here using the top portion, even if I have the cubes, I can't use any other part of the card. I need to vent any of the cubes that's on this card because it's now used up before using any of these other options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just use one of my cubes here to increase my evade by 1. And this becomes a 3 for the duration of the enemy's turn. And the reason why I'm doing that is because he is within range and is probably going to attack when it's his turn, and so that just beefs up my evade. I have 2 cubes left. I could retain it to just save it for, and it'll carry over into the next round. But let's go ahead and use it to fire off my missiles. So I will go ahead and put 1 blue, and then I need 3 from the common supply heat tokens to launch off all of these missiles. And what happens here is these launch off the light missiles, the green ones. So I'm going to grab all 4 tokens and I'm going to stick them right next to the scarab, because right now they're flying in space and going towards the scarab, and he's going to have some options when it's his turn. And that's pretty much it. You know, I could move if I wanted to with my final cube, but I'm going to choose to save it because, again, you're managing your actions, and if you use them all up during this turn, then you're going to have less actions available to you next turn. So let's go ahead and go over to the scarab. It's his turn. We're going to reset his evade down to 3. It's already at 3. And then I have all of my cubes back, so I don't need to vent. And now I can turn, which I'm not going to go to. I can opt not to turn at all, but I do have to make a short movement. And a short movement just moves me up this much. So the short still moves you up pretty substantially since you're going from one end to the other. So now I'm really close to this model. I'm going to go ahead and repair my maneuvering fins. And the way that I do that is you look here and it shows that you need 1 power cube in order to do that. So let's go ahead and pay that, because until you repair it, you can't use the action that's on the front of this card. So I'm going to use that to repair, flip it over, but here's the catch. Because I use this, I have to keep it on here. And because there's a power cube on here, I can't use this round. I have to actually vent this cube in order to use any of that. So you're spending a turn just repairing any items that are damaged. Now the first action that I want to do after repairing is I do want to try to shoot down these 4 missiles that are heading my way, because any missiles I don't shoot down is going to hit my ship at the end of my turn. So I do have 2 weapons options here, the laser or the Gatling gun. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just use my laser. So I'm going to go ahead and spend the 2 power cubes that I need. Now instead of using the stats that are right here, I'm going to actually look at the stats found on the light missile, and I need to roll a number of dice equal to the shoot value here, which is 4. So go ahead, since I have 4 missiles, I'm just rolling 4, and I need to get 4 or more. And here I managed to hit 2 of them and missed the other 2, so I go ahead and just remove 2 missiles, so I have 2 more coming at me at the end of the round. Now I could use a Gatling gun and try to shoot down the other 2, but I'm actually going to use it to shoot against the saber. So I need 2 more here, 2 more power cubes, and then a heat. I am within 1, definitely within my front arc. I'm going to roll 6 die. I need at least a base 2, but I'm going to go ahead and add the whole value, which is going to, again, make it 5s that are hitting. So I managed to hit 4 times. So that's going to do 4 points of damage to the saber, which is pretty good, and reduces the whole value down to 11. And then for my final action, I am going to go ahead and use the tri-thruster, which is 2 more points. And what it does is it makes a long action and increases my evade by 1. But what's going to happen is, and I won't even need to measure, this is going to collide. So this is what happens when you collide with other spaceships. As soon as you touch, any other actions that you were going to have is canceled and you don't do the others, so I'm not going to get that +1. Or had I collided using this, it would stop any other movement that was happening. So go ahead and stop anything else that's going to happen, and at this point I can reposition my ship to be anywhere as long as it's touching this ship, and I'm going to choose to actually have it be on the far side of the ship. Like so. And this is why the pegs, the stands, are different heights so that you can get them close to each other. But if needed, go ahead and remove the ship from the stand if you have bits and pieces that prevent it from being able to touch one another like this. So what happens now is that each ship rolls the number of dice based on its size. Now both of these ships are size 4. That says it up here on the card. So both of them are going to be rolling 4 dice. And regardless of what ship it is, any roll of 5 or more is going to do a point of damage onto the other ship. So let's go ahead and start with the saber, and it is going to do 2 points of damage to the scarab claw. And then the scarab goes ahead and rolls 4 since it's size 4, and again 5 pluses. Only does 1 point of damage, but its special ability is you may re-roll 1 die during a collision. So I'm going to go ahead and re-roll this, and that's going to add another point of damage. So this reduces the whole down to 9. A quick note, you notice that when I reposition my ship, I'm not allowed to change the facing or rotate it. I have to keep the same facing, but I can position it anywhere around. Also, if your movement has you leaving the edge of the board, again, just like collision, your current action ends. You don't do anything else to the right of the movement. So for example, had this long action made me go off the edge, I lose the ability to do a U-turn. So what happens is at the edge where you leave, you can go ahead and redirect or reposition any direction where your ship is coming back onto the board. You can proceed with any other new actions after that. But also here with this collision, after we resolve hull damage, had I had more power cubes, then I could have chosen to do any remaining actions as well. But now we do go ahead and resolve the 2 missiles that are here, and again we just use the ability just like a regular attack, and we roll 1 die for each missile. So I'll be rolling 2 die, and it says 0, but the whole value for this is currently 3. So I need to roll 3s. And I got 1 hit, and each of the light missiles does 2 points of damage. So we reduce this down to 6. So the scarab is already down to half its hit points. So we'll go ahead and go to the saber's turn, and we follow along and we reduce it back down to 2 since we used a cube last turn to increase it by 1. And then we can vent up to 5 total cubes, either power and heat. So any combination. I do want to be able to maneuver more. Remove this one from my wings. Possible attack. I'll go ahead and remove these 2. And then also my cockpit. So basically I have my missiles that I won't be able to launch. I can do a turn, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn, but not the full 90 degrees, and then going to make a long movement And I finished with my obligatory movements here, and now I can use parts. So that's pretty much a quick turn. Let me go ahead and talk to you about these different terrain features. So basically, if the Saber was trying to shoot the Scarab, both the meteor field as well as these gravity rifts completely block line of sight. So in this case, I do not have line of sight to the Scarab and wouldn't be able to take the shot. Shooting through these debris fields and these ice clouds provides cover. And regardless of how many number of terrain features there are, you only get this bonus once, but you do get a increase in your hit number. So this would be increased up to 2. So instead of having a value of 3, it would be 5 if the Saber was shooting through to try to hit the Scarab. Now in this example, he would still have a lack of line of sight, but let's say this wasn't here. The Scarab would not get a bonus since the Saber is inside of the ice cloud. He's able to shoot out of it without any penalty since he is in it. But, so let's say these meteors actually that the Scarab is inside of it, he no longer receives the cover behind the meteors, and there would be no penalty or bonus based off of this situation here. The opposite direction, the Scarab is able to shoot at the Scepter, but the Scepter does gain the benefit of the ice cloud because it is still between them. Had the Scepter been on the other side of the ice cloud, then he loses any benefit from the ice cloud feature. So here's what happens when you move into any terrain. So pretty much if I were to use a long movement to move my Saber into this, I stop, and any other corresponding movement or abilities that happen to the right of the card doesn't happen. So for example here, I would not get the turn action if I used a short to move into there. The other benefit of going into meteors is that if missiles are chasing after you, you actually get a free shot at possibly them hitting meteors. So this is a great way to get rid of any missiles that are chasing you, and you basically roll 4 dice without having to use any of your guns, using the same value to knock out any further missiles. If you move into the debris cloud, you immediately increase your evasion by 1. And on your next turn, if you continue to move, you don't multiply that. You have to actually leave the debris cloud and then come back in order to increase again by another 1. Once you hit a gravity rift, you are able to take another long move action in the same direction. And then finally, if you do enter into an ice cloud, you're immediately able to vent any single cube from any of your parts. There are rules for AI so that you can play cooperatively or solo, but I'm not going to go into those rules, but I'm thankful that they do have AI as an option. There are rules for playing with multiple ships, and they have these handy tokens that you can slide into their bases so that you can keep track of which one of your ships have activated because you are alternating between players. So here you have this token that you flip over once your ship has been activated. It doesn't have to go in order 1 and 2, but whichever one you know has been activated for that round. And then there are instructions on how to create your custom ships, which I think is a huge part of this game, as well as different scenarios that you're going to have that has different size boards that you're playing on, whether or not you have AI. So I think there's going to be great variability. So that's a basic run through of the rules, and hopefully that gives you a sense of how quick this game plays, how easy it is to keep track of the abilities, and the resource management that is required in playing this game. These meteors actually don't come with the game. These are actually ones that I made for XWing. I just threw them on there in order to just have more 3D terrain, which is something that I really like. But hopefully, once the Kickstarter launches next month, it will be successful. I hope that they unlock, because I would love to have cards and stats for all of these other models, which if they do raise enough money, they will add those on the list. At the moment of launching, the models that you will be able to play with obviously are these two models, the Saber and the Scarab. But in addition to that, the smaller ones. The Locust and the Lance will be playable, as well as the Wasp and Falx, which comes in one kit, one box. And my guess is that the intermediate level might include all of the playable models as well. I really believe Scott and his team have play tested for a long time. And if you want to try out the game, they are able to play online. Go to the Discord channel, which is open to anybody. You can find out more information there. You can see a bunch of really cool builds of people who just went bonkers and bought tons of these sets to create their own custom builds. You can also use the link to go see their animated series, which came out for kids. I mean, this would be awesome just as regular toys for your kids, but also it would be totally fun for them to get into gaming at a young age. But again, I want to reiterate the fact that this is a robust system and is totally enjoyable. It isn't a dumbed down rule set for kids to play, but as an adult, I really like this system of playing. There's a number of features that I like over XWing, and the low cost of entry is one of those things. Please hit the like button and subscribe, as I am hoping to follow up with another video, at least possibly an interview with Scott and his partner, and to keep you abreast with what happens with the campaign. I'm really hoping that they are successful and unlock ability cards for all of the ships that they currently have online, which is quite a bit. And finally, use the link below to go to my Patreon page to have the opportunity to be chosen by Bob to be receiving an intermediate pledge once the Kickstarter launches. Thanks so much. Happy gaming. We'll see you next time.